of the night is Grand Chief Stewart Phillip. He's the president of the Union of BC Indian Chiefs.
Haskahal, Nipisi Naxil, and Shaya Squeeze, Asiut. I want to begin by acknowledging the Coast Salish peoples, namely the Musqueam, the Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh. And I would also like to thank the organizers, the Council of Canadians, for the kind invitation and bringing us all together to have this important conversation. I've heard it said in the past that there's a certain advantage to being the final speaker. You simply thank everybody for coming and ask the last person to turn the lights on. But I guess the reason I came down tonight is very much what the last speaker had to say. I've been blessed with 6 adult children, and they in turn have blessed Joan and myself with 14 incredibly beautiful grandchildren. And that's what gets me out of bed in the morning, and that's what energizes me to drive to all points of the compass and all throughout the province of British Columbia. I've been involved in the issues of our people for the last 40 years, and I've seen an enormous amount of change and transformation in the last 4 decades. I've seen incredible change, yet at the same time I've seen other things get worse. And of course, I'm speaking of the great peril that Mother Earth finds herself in at this point in human history. And I very much believe that as a lot of scientists and environmentalists and indigenous spiritual leaders have said for a very long time now, that we are indeed at a tipping point. And we heard an hour or so ago the Premier get up, and of course the party line of the BC Liberals is it's a generational opportunity. LNG is a generational opportunity. And I don't believe that for a moment. I believe what we're presented with is the most incredible challenge of our generation, to stand up, to mobilize, to organize, to defend the natural values that we all treasure and have taken for granted for a very, very long time. We've all been blessed with the opportunity to live in one of the most beautiful spots on the planet. And we've taken our children out into the wilderness and out into the bush, and we've enjoyed that natural beauty. And I think to our own detriment, we just assume that that's going to be there forever. And with what we've witnessed here tonight and what we've heard and what we're learning, the only way that our grandchildren will enjoy the same legacy that was left to us is if we do what the last speaker talked about. We absolutely have to stand up, be counted, organize, mobilize, and fill rooms like this over and over and over again, so that we are able to popularize what's happening. And I think by and large, society has been completely taken in by the corporate, as we know, as BS, the propaganda, the marketing, the bombardment of advertisements we hear 24/7, and we heard the Premier talking about it being, clean energy, clean industry, and we know that is absolutely not the truth. I think we need to be absolutely visible. We have to be heard. We have to be loud. We have to be proud. We have to be out in the streets. And I know it's a challenge to give up your time. I was at a funeral of a very young person in Osulias just a few days ago. And for those of you that don't know, Chief Clarence Louis has been the chief there for 20, 30 years. And he talked about the responsibilities of leadership. And he talked about what he described as leadership time. And he said leadership time is not 9 to 5, it's not 5 days a week. Leadership time is when you contribute your own personal time to a cause, whatever that cause may be. And in this case, it's being able to educate the general public about the absolute horror story of LNG. Coming here tonight and seeing some of those presentations, it never occurred to me that it's far, far worse than Enbridge and Kinder Morgan. I think that we have been lulled into thinking if we win those battles, that we'll have won the war. But I would suggest, based on what we witnessed, that the LNG is the real enemy and everything that it represents. The Union of BC Indian Chiefs is mandated by resolution when our chiefs come together in assembly. And as of late, our leaders, and we represent over half of the First Nations in the province, our organization is growing in proportion to the threats to the homelands of our constituent communities and the failure on the part of the Government of Canada to be able to do anything other than hollow rhetoric and promises. We've been mandated to organize and to look toward a rally, a march. We were looking at June the 7th. There's some discussion that should be pushed over to the 9th. For those of you that have been following these issues, there's been 3 forums throughout the province on LNG. The last one was in Fort Nelson a few weeks ago. And I had the honor and the opportunity to be there. And I can tell you it was life-changing for me, and it was heartbreaking. Because like yourselves, I've heard about the devastation to the homelands of Treaty 8. But we had the opportunity to go up in a chopper and go over the basins. And it took a few hours, and it was absolutely heartbreaking. There's no other way to describe it, to actually see it, to see how devastating it is to the landscape and how it's completely fractured the land. And I'm told at nighttime, the lights of the gas plants and the wells, it looks like the Lower Mainland. And when you see it like that, it's so hard to talk about. I desperately, all that time we're up in the air, I look for a moose or a deer or some sign of wildlife, and I didn't see anything. So it's the northeast. The economy of this province is being built on the destruction of the northeast. And the pipelines that are being contemplated by LNG will further destroy the north. And we have a social responsibility as human beings, as grandparents and parents, to lend our support to Treaty 8, to all of the people in the north that are fighting so valiantly to push back this agenda. And I think that we're making progress. I absolutely know that to be the case. We had the dubious opportunity, I suppose, to meet with the new Minister of Natural Resources earlier today, this afternoon. We met in the very same room that we met former Minister Joe Oliver. And I described that meeting as absolutely bizarre when that happened about a year ago. And he just simply repeated speaking points. There was no dialogue, there was no serious discussion of the issues at hand. And today we sat across from Minister Rickford and we heard the same rhetoric, the same speaking points, the same arrogance, the same condescending manner that we should wake up, we should smarten up and know and understand that the Government of Canada knows best and that we should go along with this agenda. And it was a very tense, adversarial meeting that we had today. So there's absolutely no way that they're even going to look at the IFERD report and the 30-odd recommendations in that report, which would require substantive investments to bring about those recommended interventions. They're not about to do that. They're looking for a shortcut to be able to get through the constitutional and legal minefield of the rights of the First Nations in this province. And I had the sense that they're under tremendous pressure because I believe that both Canada and British Columbia are falling behind with respect to the international market situation and Premier Clark's bogus notions of prosperity vis-a-vis LNG, I think was a gimmick. It was an election gimmick, and it was bogus from day one. And I think that the news we heard today with respect to the Russian-Chinese arrangement with natural gas exports is going to present a very embarrassing challenge for the Premier to be able to try and assure the markets and potential investors that BC somehow is still in this race, because I don't believe that is the case, but nonetheless we know that we'll continue to fight these battles until such time as we have governments in place with a national and provincial vision that speaks to the interests of the people who have made their homes in this beautiful province, who have invested generations of their families' lives in building a livelihood in tourism and everything that speaks to the natural values and the beauty of this province. And up till now, with these governments, we've been catering to outside interests, corporate interests, and the interests of the genuine British Columbians are being ignored and sacrificed. So we have to mobilize. This has to become a popular struggle. And I just want to close off by thanking each and every one of you for coming out tonight and so generously sharing of your time and hearing from our learned panel here. I just want to also end by acknowledging the Treaty 8 chiefs who have demonstrated incredible leadership over the last decade or two with respect to this fight against oil and gas, against Site C. And, without question, I've fallen in love with Treaty 8 territory, with the elders in Treaty 8, and when you get to that point of falling in love, you will be there at their side when the rubber hits the road. So again, I thank everyone for coming out.